Arkansas is still bitter after a questionable call at the end of the 2020 game versus Auburn. Arkansas is playing for revenge, while Auburn is playing for redemption. Let's talk about it. The first thing I've got to say is that, yes, Auburn lost against Georgia last week, but guys, it's time to move on. Let's move past that loss. Hopefully the team has learned from what happened in that game at Jordan-Hare versus Georgia. But the most important thing is that we need to remember what Coach Harsin says. Keep that 1-0 mentality. Moving on. First, I want to take a moment to talk about the history of this game between Auburn and Arkansas, specifically the last 10 years of this matchup. In the last 10 years, Auburn has won 9 out of 10 times. The only time that Arkansas won this game was in 2015, and it took 4 overtimes to beat Auburn. Looking to last year's game in 2020, that game ended with a very controversial call. Towards the end of the game, Bo Nix was trying to spike the ball to stop the clock, but instead, he fumbled the snap. He picked up the snap, and when he spiked it, he actually spiked the ball backwards. This should have signified a fumble, a live ball, but instead it was ruled intentional grounding. When the refs reviewed that play, they did not overturn it. Instead, the play stood. This infuriated Arkansas fans because it very possibly changed the outcome of that entire game. Arkansas fans have been salty about that play ever since. I've seen countless compilations of Arkansas fans saying that Auburn always gets calls that go their way. And what I can assure you is that the Arkansas Razorbacks are looking for revenge. And what we know about them this season is that they are currently having the best year they've had in a long time. I think they got as high as ranked number 8 before they played against Georgia and lost in spectacular fashion. But they are clearly a much better team than they've been. And, they had a close game against Ole Miss. They had a huge game against Texas earlier in the season when they blew them out like 42-21 or something, or 40-21. But regardless, Arkansas is having a much better year than they've had in quite a while. So as I mentioned, they embarrassed Texas when they beat them 40-21. They beat Texas A&M 20-10, and this win looks even more impressive now that Texas A&M has beaten Bama. And last week, they played a very exciting game against a pretty good Ole Miss team, and they ended up losing 52-51, but they still put up a ton of points in that game. In the end, it just didn't work out for them. While Arkansas wants revenge, Auburn is looking for redemption. Auburn has 2 losses to top 5 teams this season, but now that Bama has a loss, there's a renewed hope for this Tiger team. They know that they have a good chance if they win out. Not a good chance. If they win out, they are in the SEC championship. Even if they lose one more game, they could still get in as long as they won out and beat Bama. But regardless of that, they have a much better chance of making it to the SEC championship now if they can get business taken care of, and that starts this weekend against Arkansas. The bottom line for the Auburn Tigers is that if they win, they are in the SEC championship. And by win, I mean win out. Every game from now till the end of the season. Win the Arkansas game, win the Texas A&M game, Ole Miss, the whole gamut. Run that gauntlet and you are in it. Now let's take a look at how Arkansas and Auburn match up. Taking a look at Auburn and Arkansas's stats for the current season, sometimes it's hard to do a direct comparison because you play different teams, different situations, but this is what we have, so we're going to do the best. We're going to look at it, make the best comparison we can, and then talk about what I expect to see this weekend when Auburn plays Arkansas. So let's first start by looking at some of the offensive stats. First, in total points this season, Auburn has scored 210, while Arkansas scored 194. That brings, when you average that out over the points per game, Auburn is scoring an average of 35 points per game, while Arkansas is scoring about 32 points per game. Looking at yardage, first let's look at rushing yards. Auburn has 1,237 rushing yards, while Arkansas has 1,469. For passing, Auburn has 1,471 passing yards, Arkansas 1,289. That brings their total offensive yardage to almost an identical number. Pretty close. It's 50 off. Auburn has 2,708, while Arkansas has 2,758. So very close numbers when we're looking at offensive production for yardage. You can even extrapolate that out to touchdowns. Auburn has 25 touchdowns this season, while Arkansas has 24. Once again, very similar. Breaking this down in a different way, we can look at Auburn and Arkansas on a rank comparison. So this is how the rushing offense ranks, how the rushing defense ranks, how the passing offense ranks, and then also looking at a yards per game breakdown. First, for the rushing offense, Auburn is currently ranked 32 with 206.2 yards per game. Arkansas is ranked 10 with 244.8 yards per game. So they are getting about 40 more yards per game than Auburn is. And I think part of that is we had a couple games where we just got stopped. Georgia State, we struggled some, especially that first half. And then against Georgia, we not completely, but we got shut down compared to some of our other games. Now looking at rushing defense. Auburn's rushing defense is much, much better than Arkansas. Auburn's rushing defense is currently ranked 22, allowing 104.7 yards per game. Arkansas's rushing defense is ranked 100 because they are allowing 181.7 yards per game. That's a much, much bigger discrepancy there. For the passing offense rank, Auburn is currently ranked 57 because they're getting 245 yards per game, while Arkansas is ranked 84, much worse, at 214.8 yards per game. So it's about a 30-yard difference there. When you look at that overall for total offense, as far as yards per game, Auburn is getting 451.2 yards per game, while Arkansas is doing a little bit better at 459.6 yards per game. So I told you a little about the history of this game. Arkansas is obviously a little more embarrassed because they've only won one game in the past 10 years, and that had to be won in 4 overtimes. They have a big chip on their shoulder from last season because they felt they should have won that game, but a bad call prevented that from happening. They think the call that Auburn got went in their favor, causing them to lose. So they've got that in their mind. They also have had a very good season, especially compared to how they've been in the past. They are coming off a loss, just like Auburn is, but they are going to be playing at home. So they're playing at home. They're coming off of a loss. They've had a good season, and they want revenge. They are not going to make this easy for Auburn. I guarantee the fans are going to be loud. They, like I said, they've got that chip on their shoulder. I would honestly say there's some hate there because of what's happened in the past. But ultimately, what I think it's going to come down to is how does Auburn perform on offense? I think defensively, we're going to stack up pretty nicely. Yes, Arkansas has been pretty effective with their rush, but I do think Auburn's defense will be able to stop them to a degree. Arkansas will have some production, but Auburn has just been, they've been a little better with the rush defense. Pass defense has not been nearly as good. But where Arkansas is going to have trouble, I mentioned to you that they are the number 100 ranked rushing defense. Well, that's going to be tough because I told you that Auburn's rushing offense is ranked number 32, getting 206.2 yards per game. I think Arkansas is going to have a hard time with our rushing attack. I may be wrong, I may be off base, but I honestly feel that with the 3 backs we have back there, plus if Bo Nix is running, Arkansas is going to have a very tough time stopping us. They've got the home field advantage. They've got a chip on their shoulder. They want revenge, and especially after last season, they do not want us to win this game. So, like I said, they're going to make it hard. They're going to fight, but I don't believe yet. I've not seen enough to make me think that they're going to be able to stop us. Now, the question is, are they going to try to do something like we saw against Georgia State, where they're going to try to overload the box and force us to pass? If that happens, we could be looking at a different situation where we might be struggling to get some yards on offense, because it's all going to depend on what the passing game looks like. If they load the box and make it where we cannot run, and they say, all right, we're going to call your bluff, let's see how you do passing the ball, how is Bo Nix going to answer? How is Brian Harsin, Mike Bobo, what are they going to do? What are they going to have dialed up to give us an advantage in that situation? They know we've got Tank Bigsby. They know we've got Sean Shivers, Jarquez Hunter. They're going to be expecting that, and they also know we have struggled in the passing game, especially when we look at all those drops we've had from our wide receivers, Sean Shivers, all these people who were throwing the ball. We just can't hold on to it. And I think Arkansas is going to have that in their mind during this whole game, or especially at the start of this game. And their plan for this game is going to be revolved around how do we stop the run from Auburn, and how do we force them into a passing situation where they can't complete the pass, they're dropping the ball, which causes the offensive production just completely to drop. But as far as how this game is going to end up, I predicted last week that Georgia would win. They did win. The score prediction I had was a little off. I had Auburn scoring a little bit more and Georgia scoring a little bit less. And this week, I'm feeling a little more optimistic. I do think that Auburn is going to pull out the victory. I know we didn't look fantastic against Georgia, but I think Auburn will pull it out this time. As far as what the score will be, I do think this is going to be a pretty close game, and I think it might be a higher scoring affair than we've seen recently. So I'm looking more in the range of this being a game where Auburn scores about, I'm just going to throw this out there. Ready? Auburn 35, Georgia 31. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be a tough battle, but that's what I'm looking at. Auburn 35, Arkansas 31. Let me know your predictions down in the comments. Who do you think is going to win? And drop your score prediction down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel and also hit the like button. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one.